Welcome back to Now. No opportunity wasted. I'm your host, Angelica Ross. And as always, we're here to take a deep dive beyond the surface of things, to challenge our assumptions and find empowerment in every moment. So let's start and kick today off with our word for today from Buddhism, Day by Day, Wisdom for a Modern Life by Daisaku Ikeda. Our quote for November 11th says, "A sense of being part of the great all-inclusive prompts us to reflect on our own place and how we ought to live. Guarding others' lives, the ecology, and the earth is the same as protecting one's own life. By like token, wounding them is the same as wounding oneself. Consequently, it is the duty of each of us to participate as members of the life community in the evolution of the universe. We can do this by guarding Earth's ecological system." So, I got tongue-tied for a second there. I think this is a really moving, though, reminder of our interconnectedness, especially in times of change and challenge. We each have a duty to protect, participate, and uplift, especially now as we face the outcomes of this election. So let's talk about it. The election's over, and Trump will be our next president. This wasn't just an electoral win either. He took the popular vote as well. And as you know, I shared last week that I was voting for Jill Stein. And now I see so much blame swirling around, from those pointing fingers at trans folks to third-party voters, blaming everyone but the campaign itself. Kamala Harris lost by such a wide margin that even the perfect swing of third-party votes wouldn't have changed anything. So let's keep it real. Blame isn't going to get us anywhere. I know some of you are upset or even angry with me over my vote, but I'm not afraid of the criticism or the anger. As a practicing Buddhist, I've learned to live with anger around me, understanding both its destructive and transformative powers. When focused correctly, anger can fuel positive change, but we need to be clear about where to direct that anger. It ain't at me. Turning against each other only strengthens the system that we're all up against. This election should be a wide wake-up call for us to organize, not just during election years, but all the time, against a system of white supremacy that isn't doing any of us any favors. I will continue organizing with Trans Tech and many other organizations here in Georgia and around the world. So let's step forward with responsibility. We are global citizens, and that means speaking up and taking action, not retreating into silence or apathy. We need to amplify our voices, not just against a president, but for all injustices that we see. Our responsibility doesn't just stop on election day. It's a daily commitment. So let's rest, and then let's rally, and let's support each other, and let's make the change that is needed. And with that spirit of togetherness, I am honored to be having a special Trans Day of Remembrance, TDOR, event that I'll be hosting in my home. Very exclusive, very private, with performances from artists like 2AM Ricky, Jaya J, Royce Hall, and myself. I'll be debuting my new song, When a Star Dies. And like I said, it's an exclusive gathering that will have some in-person tickets. I will open up some tickets, some VIP tickets, as this is a fundraiser for Trans Tech. I will also make it available live stream as a fundraiser for just $5. So you can watch this event at youtube.com/@Miss Ross. That's youtube.com/@Miss Ross. More details coming soon, so stay tuned to all my social media, the Instagram, threads. I'm on Blue Sky now. Listen, just stay tuned. If you're in Atlanta, there's going to be a very, very small audience that we're going to do this for. But please join us in honoring those lives that we have lost this year and really all the previous years. We have lost too many lives to violence. As you have heard, there was so much vitriol from Republicans and the Donald Trump's campaign and the RNC. And when we talk about responsibility, when I talk about responsibility, the ability to respond, I want a campaign. I want a candidate. I want a president who can respond to that kind of hatred and vitriol. Not with something that is kind of, on the fence or just, not rocking the boat so you can get as much support as you can. No, be unequivocal about your support across the board for us. I also want to send a heartfelt thank you to Destination Tomorrow for honoring me last week with the Angie Award. It was so beautiful and presented by my friend and former castmate on Pose, Dominique Jackson. I'm just so grateful for being recognized for the work that we all are continuing to do in community. Well, those of us that are doing that work. All right, now for this week's interview. Oh my goodness, this is a powerful one. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Dr. Leo Moore, a physician whose journey and dedication is nothing short of inspiring. Dr. Moore's story shows the strength and resilience that comes from community, family support, and personal determination. We talk about everything from his journey as a Black man in medicine to his recent battle having cardiac arrest and bouncing back from that. It's just such a beautiful conversation and anchored in our need to prioritize our health, especially as a Black community. Take a listen. Well, welcome to now, Dr. Leo Moore. How are you doing today?
I'm great today. It's nice to see you.
So I got to ask you, well, I got two questions I kind of want to start off with. The first question I want to ask you, just, to get it out the way, is how are you doing right now?
I'm great right now. It's been a busy day. I started my day with seeing a few patients and kind of did some administrative stuff this afternoon, but I've been looking forward to this conversation. So I'm great and looking forward to connecting.
I'm glad. Okay, great. I'm so looking forward to this conversation as well because, excuse me, this podcast is No Opportunity Wasted, which the context for our conversations really are around how people have made the most out of the challenges and the opportunities that have come along with their life path. I've done this mostly because, I get it. People look at my life and they're like, oh my God, you just do so many amazing things. You're gorgeous. You're all these things, right? But it's really a thing that every life and every person, no matter what you look like, what your background comes from, whatever, everybody has challenges. And, it really is what makes a difference is how you respond and how you show up for those challenges. So my second question for you is, I want to talk a little bit about the path to doctor, especially as a Black man. You were just named. Was it like the guy? Wait, you're like the ultimate guy. So talk to me. Let's go back a little bit in the beginning of just what kind of foundation do you believe that you had that supported you to take this path that you've taken?
Great way to start this conversation. So I'll say that the support system I had started with my family. So my mother is a nurse. My grandmother is a nurse. My aunt is a nurse. And my other aunt is a medical assistant.
Oh, wow.
And then on the men's side of my family, they're preachers. And so I come from a family of servant leaders. I am the first doctor in my family. My family really, nurtured that dream that I had at the age of 5 up until I was 25 when I graduated from medical school. So it really started with family pouring into me, family supporting my dream and what I saw for myself in the future and telling me and showing me even that it was possible.
Wow. Yeah. I do have to say that, even though I think as a trans person and just as someone who's experienced sort of the challenges that I did experience in the beginning of my life,
One thing that is for sure is that because my parents sort of poured, even though, I'm saying they didn't stick to all the support, but the initial situation was you can do anything you set your mind to.
Mhm.
Education is the key. Education is everything. So how, because I know there's the one part is the education and the actual like doing it part. How believable was this for you? Um, how much sort of like, I guess, faith I would say did you have in this dream with both the daunting task of medical school, of like, I'm talking about attending and passing,
Mhm.
not alone, then the other daunting task of financing a medical education,
Mhm.
seeing all of that, how did you kind of stay focused on your objective and
So
how
I'll
did you
tell
get
you,
it done?
Angelica, I'm the first doctor in my family. So there was not that blueprint until I met a black physician when I was in high school. So the high school I went to was actually in a majority white area. I was in a program in Atlanta called Minority to Majority, where I was bused from my neighborhood to northern DeKalb County, which was a predominantly white area. And at that high school, there was a hospital right nearby there. And I took this class that paired me with a doctor there who happened to be a black emergency medicine physician. And it was the first time in all of my years of wanting to be a doctor that I actually saw someone who looked like me, who is a doctor and was a doctor, you know? And so once I saw him, which was around the age of 16, so from around 5 to 16, it was just this dream kind of floating in the ether. When I saw him, the dream crystallized because I realized this actually can come to pass. This can come to fruition. I can become this doctor, you know, and I can impact my community and serve my community because look, I'm looking at another black man who looks like me, who's doing this every day. And not only was he just an emergency medicine physician, which is not even a just to become a
Right,
physician
of
is a big
course. I'm,
deal,
I'm sure that's a pretty heavy situation.
but he also became chief of staff for the hospital. He was a leader in his community. He had a beautiful family that he loved and supported. You know, so I got to see what it could be like for me to be a black man in the profession and living a life of service, of love, of joy, you know, which is something that I needed to see to say, I'm going to do what I need to do to make this happen.
So you said it was a program, minority to majority. Is that
M
what
to
it's
M
called?
for short.
Um, I want to talk about that for a second. I kind of want to pause there for a second because is that program still running? Do you
I
know?
don't think the program is still running. I think they ended it a few years ago.
Yeah, and the reason why I ask is because I feel like there has been a shift in our country, with obviously the funding for programs like that, and I just can't help but sit here and think like maybe how important that one experience was. Not saying that maybe that was like, to claim for the whole thing. But I mean, I'm sure like coming up as a young person, that meant a lot to be able to have access to that. And the fact that we're seeing less and less programs like that, we're seeing more rollbacks on DEI. We're seeing, really, I think, I really see it as this, you see this investment in our culture not being educated, you know what I mean? And kind of like, look over here, isn't this shiny
Mhm.
and fun and entertaining and what
Mhm.
have you? And we're seeing less and less of this. And so when you get into the ranks and here you are, with your colleagues, I'm a doctor just like y'all a doctor. Um, did you feel like, the question I want to ask is like the experience for black doctors within
Mhm.
white institutions.
Mhm.
Um, the question I want to ask you. I'm being very I'm just being very specific about this question because I guess my question to you is how has it been for you? How's the experience been for you navigating now as a professional, as a doctor who has studied, who knows what you know, who
Mhm.
has the credentials behind your name,
Mhm.
but still has to navigate through institutions that may not value the knowledge you went and got?
hmm hmm that's a great question. I also want to go back briefly to what you said about DEI
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
how a lot of those resources are being pulled back. Another resource that really helped me was the Georgia Hope Scholarship. So it was a scholarship program that if you had a 3.0 GPA at the time that you graduated high school or even throughout college, then you would get free tuition to public universities. So it was free tuition and a book allowance, and they also paid your fees. And so when I graduated from high school, I had a 3.2 GPA.
Wow.
I was not the exceptional student from the beginning. And I think that's something that's very important for people to know is that many
Yes.
of us come to medicine and come to our careers from different starting points, right? Like for me, from the ninth grade up until about the 11th grade, my GPA was like a 2.5 or so. I read Ben Carson's Gifted Hands and read his story about, coming up in Maryland and how, his mom couldn't read and how she would push him to go to the library and read books and write book reports and how he learned to read and to study and became this neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins. And I thought, well, his mother couldn't read. Like, my mother can read, is a professional. I have everything I need. I can be disciplined. I can do this. And I literally saw my GPA go from a 2.5 for sophomore year fall semester to a 3.5 spring semester
Wow.
after reading that book during Christmas break. And
Wow.
so, the discipline, one,
Mhm.
and the inspiration too. And as you mentioned, those resources that I think are so important that are being pulled back from us were key on my journey. But as far as, being a physician and having credentials, XYZ, one of the things that has helped me along the way is I went to a historically Black medical school. So I went to the Morehouse
Yes.
School of Medicine for medical
Yes.
school.
Yes.
And so I got to learn from Black doctors and other doctors of color. Like I got to learn from a doctor who became the director of the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute at the National Institutes of Health. Like I was learning from Black physicians who had learned at huge institutions who, fought for us to have spaces there and to create a nurturing environment for us at the Morehouse School of Medicine.
That's
So I
amazing.
felt so blessed and so fortunate to have trained at a place like that that gave me such pride and confidence in what I had learned. So that when I had to step into other environments where I was not the majority, I felt confident in the knowledge that I had, and I knew how to take care of people who look like me. I knew how to take care also, of people who come from, harder backgrounds and rougher experiences and situations and have been marginalized, and it just really helped me to double down and recommit to my purpose in medicine, which I think it's so important in whatever profession you're in to figure out your purpose in that profession, like,
Well, talk to me about for a second because I want to go back to what you said about being able to talk to our people. Being able to. What does that look like in a time of, say, for instance, like COVID, where there was so much misinformation going around, and you have, as Black people, we have I think, a very understandable mistrust of the medical industrial complex and just some of the things that they will do and experiment on Black bodies without letting a single soul know, without us even knowing about it. So what does your conversations look like trying to get, I guess, our community to have faith in the medical system, especially with you being a part of it?
Mm. Well, first off, for me, it's establishing commonalities. It's and truly understanding who that person is and answering the questions they have. Because honestly, Angelica, I find the challenge is that doctors are talking at people, not talking with them. And not just doctors,
Mm-hmm.
other healthcare professionals as
Of
well.
course,
For
yes.
me, it is a conversation, it is an exchange of ideas. Even as your physician, for example, I recognize that my job is to give you the risks and benefits and for you to make the best decision for yourself. So as long as my patients and the people I talk to in the community know that I am coming at this just trying to give you the best information that I have, the most up to date, the most evidence based information, and you make the best decision for yourself, I walk away from that conversation regardless of what decision they made, knowing that I did my job, knowing that I did my part.
Mm-hmm. One thing that comes to mind as I look at you, a lot of times people judge by what we see, and you seem like a smart, intelligent, able-bodied person who, um, obviously, being black in America, you've had some challenges through your journey, but nothing like what I heard or read that you went through just last year in 2023. Um, Let me look at it up again. This said that you
Mhm. I went into cardiac arrest.
and and okay. So one, how are you doing now? And two, talk to me about what it looked like to go from that moment um to sort of believing, understanding, and working towards rebuilding, your life after an experience like that, because that could shake a person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, one thing that I will say that I'm grateful to God for is that there was already that discipline in my life in regards to how I eat, that I exercise very regularly, that I'm truly living the life that I tell my patients and community to live. And so that actually helped me because now I'll tell you a bit about the story of what happened, Angelica, because then that will also help to kind of frame this
Please,
part.
because
So,
I'm sitting here wondering how someone at your age who is mindful about what they eat and what have you experiences cardiac arrest.
yeah, so I went in for an elective procedure. And I had actually already had all of my pre-surgery workup. I had an EKG, it was normal. I had a chest x-ray, it was normal. I had all my blood work, it was normal. And so I went in for a surgery that they had never had anyone go into the ICU after this surgery. So,
Wow.
they just knew, oh, he's going to be fine. Like he's at peak health, he's great. So when they went to do an incision into the right side of my chest, they had to pump some CO2 or carbon dioxide into the left side. And when they did that, my heart rate plummeted from about 80 beats per minute to zero. And they immediately went into CPR on me. And I was in cardiac arrest for 9 minutes and 25 seconds.
Wow. Do you think about that? I know you think about that 9 minutes and 25 seconds just as like, I'll say this. The way that I look at my life, there's been moments in my life. There was a moment in my life, trigger warning for those that are listening. I'm going to talk about suicide a little bit, but there was a moment when people know the story I talk about all the time that basically when I was 16 or 15 or 16, my mother asked me to commit suicide. She was like, either you do or I do because I can't live with a child like you. And so, there was an attempt at that time. And so I just remember being on the verge of my life, it going one way or the next. And one thing I can't help but think about is, for me, I try to knock the poison out of people's hands that helps them to deteriorate from the inside out. Less about what other people are saying and doing to them, and more about the fact that I am now dying from the inside out because I've ingested this poison about what my life is.
Mm,
And so from that moment forward, I knew And I guess you looking back in hindsight, wow, like had my life not continued, the ripple effect of my life would not have happened. Can you talk to me about what has been the ripple effect of your life from that moment?
That is such a great question. So, the ripple effect for me has been one, I realized that my purpose on earth was not done. 9 minutes and 25 seconds in cardiac arrest and to be revived, it made it clear that there was more that God had for me to do on this earth. So, that was number one. Number two was being able to show people and share with people that although you may not have a cardiac arrest, and I hope you don't have a cardiac arrest, you could deal with a divorce, a car accident, a mental breakdown, whatever it is. The more that we prime our body to be ready to
Mm-hmm.
react and to heal from those situations, the more likely we are to be able to recover. I'll tell you, Angelica. So the next morning after the cardiac arrest, when the surgeon came in, he saw me sitting on the side of the bed, already sitting up eating breakfast. I was holding myself up eating breakfast the day after a 9 minute and 25 second cardiac arrest. An hour or two later, I had the nurse walk me down the hall so that I could show them that I'm fine because my mother had flown into town from Mobile, Alabama overnight.
I
She
bet she
wanted me to
did.
stay in the
I bet she
hospital.
did.
She
Yes.
did. I mean, she made it happen. Like, and of course, there's a layover from Mobile, Alabama, right? But she made it happen. And so she wanted me to stay in the hospital, but I was clear that this is not going to happen to me again. I need to go home and rest. I can't rest in the hospital. Anyone who has stayed in the hospital knows that when you're in the hospital, they've got the IV in you, they've got the blood pressure cuff on, you hear beeping and dinging and people talking outside of your room. Like I knew that I couldn't stay in the hospital, right? And
Mm-hmm,
so I had to
mm-hmm.
prove to them that I could go home. So I went home. I was able to prove to them, and they didn't send me to the regular floor. They sent me home. I was discharged. And then the next day, I told my mom, let's go for a walk to the corner store. So we go for a walk to the corner store. The next day, I told her, let's go a little bit further. Let's try to do a mile.
A mile.
We went for a
Okay.
mile walk.
Mm-hmm.
By that point, mom is like, you seem to be better. I'm like, mom, I'm good. That
Wow.
third day, I started lifting weights.
Was there something in your was there something in your body? I feel like you were listening to your it sounds like you were listening to your body and the cues you were taking. But okay. I think that this is always such an interesting conversation and spectrum because I think there's a difference between maybe you listening to saying I'm listening to my body and someone else who is listening to the conditioning of their body in the sense of
Mm,
what their body has been conditioned to and what feels comfortable. So I know my body, I know this is what have you. But I think without the basic education that America has been trying to give, the youth just about biology and your own basic biology and how to pay attention to when your body is saying something.
mhm.
Talk to me about the relationship or the almost like the line between you taking control of your health in a way that says I know what's best and taking medicine. Now, and I want to say this, that this is a little bit outside obviously your this experience we're talking about right now with you,
Mhm,
but what
mhm,
I'm getting at is I think, say for instance, with various things from therapy, like
mhm,
mental health issues, to actual physical health issues, we've
mhm.
learned a lot about stress, diet, just environmental issues, just a lot of different things. Where for you is the line or the balance between personal uh, sort of personal leadership in your health, and I guess giving way to medical, having to take medication.
That's
Because
a
there's
great
people who want to
question.
go like alternative health sometimes. Sometimes people like, I don't want to take no Advil. I'm not taking no Tylenol. I don't even take nothing. So what is the balance?
That's a good question, and I do think that the balance is going to depend on the person. I will
Yeah.
say, but the first thing I always tell people: pay attention to your body. Our bodies tell us when something is wrong. Our bodies also tell us when we may be pushing it too hard. Like I know, for example, if I've been working hard for a few days, all of a sudden around 8 p.m., my body's like, "Up, time to shut down. It's time to go to bed." Our bodies have a way of showing us and telling us, but we have to be in tune with it and we have to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So in my case, I knew that my body was telling me you can go a little further, but I also knew that if I felt anything abnormal, I could sit down, I could stop, you know? As far as medication is concerned, I take the same approach, pay attention to your body, but know that there are some diseases, some conditions that you have to actually take medication for.
Like it's not even an option.
It's not an option. It's
Right.
not an option. And that there are some mental health conditions that people genuinely and deeply need therapy and medication. Sometimes it can just be therapy. Other times it needs to be the combination. But what I want people to be open to is recognizing that you can do some of those alternative therapies and Western medicine therapies together. It does not have to
Correct.
be either or. Like
Mm-hmm.
no one is telling you that you have to choose, that you have to, put away your practices. If it's meditation, if it's yoga, if it's acupuncture, what have you, if it's Tai Chi, no one is saying put those things away. We're saying let's put together a plan that is fully like holistic and takes care of you in all of these aspects. Because for me, it's about a person living their longest and healthiest life. So how can all of these tools complement that so that you can live your longest, healthiest life where you're thriving, able to spend time with family and friends and do the things you love for as long as possible?
Okay, so all of that sounds great, right? It all sounds great. But I want to ask you this. What are your thoughts on between the work that you're doing, the vow that you've taken as a doctor to serve people, and where the political landscape is currently with uh, healthcare access?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I will tell you that creates an uphill battle for me every day. And it creates an uphill battle for my colleagues across the country every
How,
day. It
how
makes
so?
How so? Well, okay, so I will start with prep access. Thankfully, because I'm here in California and, Medi-Cal or Medicaid was expanded. We don't have as many challenges with that. But even when I think about the COVID vaccine, now that all the COVID vaccines have been commercialized, they have to be purchased. And if there is not a budget to purchase them for people who are uninsured or underinsured, then those people don't get access to the vaccine. And we know from the data, for those who are listening, that the vaccine greatly decreases the risk of hospitalization and death, which are our two main concerns. I want to keep you out of the hospital and I want to keep you
Mm-hmm.
alive. And then when we think about abortion access, right? When we think about reproductive rights across the country and women and people who can get pregnant having a right to choose, that is another major challenge that we see that makes it hard for people to make the best decisions for themselves. And so every day it's an uphill battle. Every day it is a fight, but it's one that we all signed up for, quite frankly. When I
Mm-hmm.
decided to be a doctor and went through training in Georgia, I knew that there were going to be these types of fights. In fact, Angelica, when I was in medical school, they almost closed down Grady Hospital. They almost closed down the major trauma one teaching hospital where so many Black and brown folks
Wow.
go for their care. Like we were outside of Grady protesting to keep Grady open.
Wow.
So from the beginning of my medical school journey until now, there has always had to be a level of advocacy because I always knew what was at stake for our people and for people who need our services if they were not available.
How did you? So speaking of the advocacy, how did you? So I got into HIV advocacy work in high school. I remember there was this after school program, and I don't even think I wasn't even out as anything at that time, but it was just more so just like it was an after. Nobody had to be out. It was just after school program talking about HIV, prevention and all of that. Um, there's so much misinformation again. I think within our communities. Would you say, because I feel like we are dealing with a lot of different health challenges when it comes to trying to eradicate and trying to really manage HIV in this country, but to me it kind of seems like HIV is less of a threat as misinformation is. Because I feel that like I didn't know until I knew, and I remember back maybe 10 years ago I was dating a guy that was HIV positive, and that's when I got my sort of real education around things, and because I liked him and I wanted to date him, and I had to get over my ignorance about the situation and understanding what it means to be undetectable, understanding what it means to keep myself safe, but also I'm just gonna put this on the table because we're just having this conversation. I feel, but like basically, I'm gonna give some layers to this. Is that at the time I was dating this guy, he was a very handsome, very attractive, very tall, bodybuilder type, white man, and with all those things I just named comes a lot of privilege. Ooh, you tall. Girls are lining up, or whatever, or ooh, you're muscular, all these privileges. And I remember when we first started dating, he told me when he disclosed to me that he was HIV positive. It was like I also was disclosing to him that I was trans at the time or whatever. But and just also number one, realizing we all have something to disclose. Number one, but secondly, what was communicated to me in that moment was I feel like dating. It seems like dating is such a game of privilege, and our preferences are so wrapped up in social conditioning and privilege and all kind of other things that when your situation and circumstances change, it's not that your preferences has changed. It's just that now he's realizing the privileges that he didn't have that he had before were no longer there. And so as we're dating, there's this disclosure, information, respect. There's this kind of thing of not just taking every girl and doing whatever you want with it. So it's almost like, in my experience dating him, I would have to say afterwards was that he was one of the most respectful men I've ever dated. He was one of the most honest men I've ever dated. He's one of the most men who's ever cared for me in such a way and cared about my health and cared about certain things. And I saw the way he cared about his own health. So I say that to say that I feel that these conversations we're still having within the Black community and at large feel to me like sometimes more of a threat. The misinformation is more of a threat than the actual virus, because we are finding ways to deal with it these days.
Angelica, first, thank you for sharing that story. That was beautiful to hear about that relationship and to hear about how respectful, how caring, how loving he was, right? Just beautiful to hear about that. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, it was amazing because I want other people to, and honestly, as a Black trans woman, I have stepped so far outside my box. Let me tell you, because the girls know I'm dating a whole woman right now. I'm a whole lesbian. But the thing is that I was not that before. I was like but it literally had to, it's decolonization. It's so much stuff. And to me, what was a game changer was me being equipped with information, period, about myself and about the lies that the world told me.
So, two things. I agree with you about the misinformation. I also want to name stigma because I think
Yes,
stigma
yes, yes,
is huge, is pervasive. It affects every aspect of HIV, from HIV testing to
yes,
the
yes.
denial that can come along with HIV diagnosis, the shame that comes along with HIV diagnosis, the desire not to be on treatment because you don't want anyone to know or to find out that you're taking medication, the failure to disclose or discomfort with disclosure as well because of all of the stigma that is with HIV, and the fact that that stigma keeps people from dating and connecting with people who are living with HIV because they don't want to be attached to that stigma. I think it's more the fear of the stigma and the shame associated with that than it
Yes, you're
is,
right.
oh, I might get HIV. Because as you mentioned, and as has been said many, many times, people know that people who are on treatment are unable to pass it on. Many of the times people know that and they still choose to say, oh, well, I only want to be with someone who's clean. Words that we need to
Get
completely
rid of.
strike from
Absolutely.
the lexicon. Like, it needs to be out of our vocabulary, clean and dirty, you know.
Oof,
And so I think that
oof.
stigma is huge. And until we address that, we're not going to see our numbers decrease. We're not going to be able to end HIV without ending HIV stigma. And I think it really takes more conversations that, quite frankly, people who are HIV negative are having with their friends, with their family. The burden should never be on people who are living with HIV. It absolutely has to be championed and taken on by people who are negative. Because for some people who are living with HIV, just living with it every day is the burden, is the stress, you know? And now you want those people to also turn around and advocate. You want those people to also have to publicly disclose. I think that all of that is a choice that that person should make, but it should never be the burden on them to end the HIV epidemic in this country and around the world.
Now, speaking of your heart, um, is it on the market? Oh, listen, when they laugh, when they listen, y'all hear it. When they laugh for a long time before they answer the question, you know it's something. What's going on? What's
I
the
mean, this
answer?
heart is completely on the market.
Oh, good. Okay. Because listen, the reason why I asked, because you are black, handsome, and a doctor. Let me tell you, it's a lot of people out there looking for that. It's a lot of people out there looking for
They
that.
better come
So,
correct.
what are you? Well, that's why. Wait, listen, we about to get it correct right here because we need to know what it's gonna take to land a black doctor, not a black. No, excuse me, not any black doctor. This black doctor, Dr. Leo Moore. What are you looking for? What does it take? What do you look for in a partner or in someone that you would date?
Mm.
Where are you at right now? Are you open to that? What are you open for?
Mm. You know, it's such a great question. I don't get asked it often. So let me see. What is important to me? I will say one of the things that's most
Yes.
important to me is someone who has their own passion for something. That is very important because, you know, I am quite a driven person. I'm passionate about the things that I'm doing. It does not have to be that, you know, he's passionate about the same things that I'm passionate about, but have something that you're interested in, something that drives you, but also someone who's thoughtful and pays attention to detail. My love languages are quality time and acts of service, you know, so someone who, like, they value time with a partner. And they think about how to make life easier for me in the same ways that I'm going to think about how to make life easier for them. Someone who knows who they are. That is also very important to me because, you know, if
Mm-hmm.
someone is trying to find themselves and they connect with me, I'm very clear and sure on who I am and the direction that my life is going. So I want to be with someone who is secure in who they are. That doesn't mean you're not open to growing together, that you're not open to evolving, but knowing who you are, knowing what you stand for, knowing what you will and will not deal with, not allowing yourself to be easily swayed by the opinions of others. All of those things are really important to me in a partner because I'm not just looking for a passenger, I'm looking for a co pilot.
Y'all heard that right? Listen, I'm hands down the same way. Like I pretty much, amen, over here in the corner over here because I have been praying. Because listen, especially as a trans woman who can snatch her hair back and look like the sexiest vixen on the planet whenever I want to. A lot of people will get me twisted as just this. That's where I'm at, and that's what I'm selling, when obviously I'm so much more than that. Obviously I'm selling much more than that. But for me, spirituality, my Buddhist practice, or just people having a spiritual compass, like they don't even have to practice the same thing, but just having a spiritual compass is extremely important for me because for me, I see that as another container of health. Because just like mental health and physical health, for me, spirituality is kind of like the core of really just like we have the heart at our center. I feel like the spirit is at the center too, because if that thing gets damaged, a lot can happen when your spirit is damaged. What does spiritual health look like or sound like to you?
Spiritual health for me, it is at the center of everything I do. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, because even from kind of starting my day with prayer to also just going through the day and affirming myself, I have this thing where every day, at least one time of the day, I'm going to tell myself I'm proud of you. There is something that's going to happen and I'm going to be proud of myself. It could be that I got up early enough to not be rushed throughout the morning, or it could be that I had a really difficult meeting and that I kept my composure. Whatever it is, I'm going to have something that I'm saying that I'm proud of myself for. It is very important to me that as I'm walking through my life and through this journey, that the person I'm with have a strong moral compass and that they have some sort of belief system. I know that my mother would love for me to say, oh, well, he definitely needs to be a Christian as well, like you are. I know she would love for me to say that. And I know that alignment could help, but I am open to learning, another person's spiritual compass, if that is what works for them, and being very happy with what I believe and who I am, if that makes sense.
No, that does make sense. And I am very proud of you, my brother. I am very proud of you because, you talk about your parents, wow, just being so supportive and loving, but you also talk about, having this spiritual foundation. And so I'm wondering what the picture looked like for you coming up and maybe coming out as a Black gay man in that kind of a household. How did you get to the place that you are now in your family?
Well, I will tell you that it was not easy because,
I bet.
growing up in a spiritual household in Mobile, Alabama, and then in Atlanta, Georgia, with a grandfather who was a pastor of a church and my mother who was not yet a minister, but is now a minister. It was tough. And I was around the age of 25 when I came out to my mom. So, further along, I was already in residency. I was living in New Haven, Connecticut. I did my residency at Yale University School of Medicine. And so I was there, and I remember she asked me, because I was really cagey about that information, because I had grown up being the golden child and being the child that everyone was looking.
Baby, I bet you they saw all their dreams in you. I bet you was going to be bringing home in babies. They had envisioned the wedding, the college thing. I mean, I could see it.
Mm-hmm. So I held on to it as long as I could, but I went off to residency on purpose because I wanted to finally be in a place where I could live as myself fully. There's something about growing up in a place and then deciding that I have to be fully myself, and being around people that you went to church with, the people you went to school with, and feeling like instantly you're put back into that childhood, frame of mind, and they think of you as that little boy, or that little girl, right? But you're a totally different person now. And so every time I would feel like I'm put back in a box. And so I needed to move away to be able to introduce myself as myself, to be able to come back home and come back to family and
Mm-hmm.
friends and say, this is who I am. And so when I came out to my
Mm-hmm.
mother, it was not an easy conversation. Um, and we both went to therapy.
And your dad is as your father has he did he have a response or
Unfortunately, my dad had passed away when I was in college.
when you were in college? So again, the reason why I'm asking, and if I'm saying too much or asking too much, let me know. Be like, Angelica, come on, girl. But listen, what I really want to get to here is you've mentioned not probably one, but two, now three things that can be a little bit too much for one person to bear. While trying to go through college, stay focused on the things that they're doing. So one, just congratulations, because in Buddhism we always say when we hear someone has a challenge in their life, a big challenge, we say congratulations, because we know that on the other side of whatever the challenge is, if you don't give up on
Mhm.
yourself, is experience, is wisdom, is strength, is fortitude, is resilience, is a lot of different things. So I appreciate you saying that, just because again, so many people go through similar experiences. They lost their parent while they were in college, or they lost their parent during a major thing, and maybe that was something that turned the car for them, whereas like they couldn't finish their objective or finish their dream. I know, I just know. Were you able, so you were in college, you were like, so you were early 20s, you hadn't
Mhm.
come out yet. So, but you got to, and this is what I love about, not, but what I'm saying is that, so you hadn't come out yet, but how did your father talk to you, treat you,
Mhm.
growing up?
He was so loving. He was so proud of
Mm-hmm.
me. Like,
Mm-hmm.
getting me my first car. Um, Really, when we were able to spend time together, it was always just beautiful time. And he always was just
Mm-hmm.
nurturing
Mm-hmm.
and supportive and proud. And you could tell that. Like, I have so many memories of him that I'm so grateful I have them, because now it's been
Mm-hmm.
over 10 years since he passed, right? So I don't get new memories with him. So that means I go kind of deeper into the memories that I do have, right? And the beauty
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that is that I
yeah.
discover memories that I hadn't even tapped into. Things that I'm like, oh, well, I remember when I was a kid and Friday nights, my dad would have all of my cousins and over and we would watch scary movies and he would, make us popcorn and homemade chocolate chip cookies. And we would all sit and I'd sit in his lap and I'm eating and I'm just enjoying the moment with him and with my family. So the beauty of it is that I've
Yeah.
gotten to go deeper into those memories and I'm always reminded of how much he loves and loved me. I
Yeah.
dated this guy a long time ago, someone that I still am close friends with and love. And he told me one night, well, one morning when we woke up, he said, Leo, I just want you to know that I felt an energy in this room last night. And he said, I could tell that it was your father. And he said, I woke up a bit and it was like I could see that he was just kind of looking over you lovingly and that he was
Wow.
protecting you. And that was one of the most
Wow.
beautiful things I'd ever heard.
Yeah. Yeah, listen, I mean, I would say this, I again stay open to all the things, because I say, as a Buddhist, what we, believe is that we're constantly on this cycle of birth and death, and that, even though the body may perish, that the spirit lives on again and again and again, and just comes back in different forms. And so, but there is a way in which, because the spirit never dies, there's a way in which we can keep their spirit alive, in how we, in the memories, in how we remember, in how we bring up their uh memory, and also in how we live our lives. I know that my grandmother, I have this one, my grandmother, both my grandmothers have passed away, and one was an evangelical pastor, and the other was she eventually found Christ. But she would cuss a mother out. Like she would teach, and she just loved us so fiercely. And there's so many different things she would say, do, tell us, not about trusting certain people or what have you. And it's just, I find myself often invoking their spirit. If my grandma was here right now, she say you are full of it, or blah blah blah, or whatever. And there's just ways in which, for me, we're all human. And I know that your mother had to demonstrate her humanity with you, as you came out, as she, had to learn to love you through all of these different things. And I know that your father loved you point blank, period. So, all he would have needed was some space, time, and energy, you know what I'm saying, to get through that as well. But now, you get to, you are such a, I don't know you. I just met you through this interview, and what have you, and I'm so proud of you. Like, I'm just so proud of, and it really has less to do about the accolades, and it really has to do with what you've chosen to do with your life and with your challenges and how you overcame. Thank you for being a model, because for Black, queer, trans, LGBTQ folks, it's really hard to find a model that has both been through some things, like we just found out in this interview, but that has also determined um, to do their best with their life. And that is what you've done. I know you're going to continue to do that. I know your mama's proud. I know your dad is proud. Your mothers are proud. Your community's proud, baby. We are all proud of you, baby. You are doing so good. Seriously, yes.
Gosh.
It was very great having you on. And now, so before we go, I want to ask you, in your opinion, what is one or a couple health tips for living in today's environment, where you have both environmental issues that might affect your health, when there are our own choices, and maybe the government's not cracking down as hard on food regulations, and all kind of stuff. There's all kind of stuff going on. So how do we stay healthy and stay safe? Can you give
I
us a
sure
few
can.
tips?
I sure can.
Yes.
So my tips are grounded in one of my board certifications, which is in lifestyle medicine. So there are 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. So the first pillar is physical activity. So making sure that you are moving your body regularly. So the goal is to ensure that you're completing at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise a week. A minimum of that, and 2 days of resistance training. The more, the better. And I also like to tell people, move your body, period. Even if you don't get to the 150, it is better that you are moving. Every little bit counts.
Yeah.
So that's number 1.
I need to do that. I'm bad at that one. Okay, so I'm gonna start working on number 1. What's
Number
two?
2 is nutrition. So I want people to eat as many vegetables, as many fruits, as many nuts and seeds, lean meats if you eat meat, seafood, olive oil. I am very much on a Mediterranean diet, have been on that for many years, and have found that that's the diet that works best for me. But I challenge folks to figure out which diet works best for your body. Not necessarily being on what I'm on, but it's important that most of your diet be plants. Now, if you add some meats in there, great. Try to make sure they're lean and have the fatty things here and there. Treat yourself to them. Don't get me wrong. But the majority of that diet should be plants and should be fruits and all of those things. So that's number 2.
Well, I'm doing pretty good on that one. That one I'm doing pretty good on. What's the
So the
next one?
next one is sleep.
Oh God. Okay. All right. Well. Okay. I'm okay. 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 Tell us why it's important, because I'm failing at that one. I think I'm not the only one. I think a lot of America is losing sleep right now. I think a lot of people around the world are losing sleep right now. So
So
talk to
I
us
know
about
that a
sleep.
lot of people are losing sleep, but a lot of people are intentionally staying up past the time that they should be sleeping as well, because they're like, oh,
Very
I'm going to work
true.
late, or I'm going to stay up and watch this show or what have you. And I'm going to forego sleep because I have to be up by a certain time to go to work or do whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
getting
Mm-hmm.
7 to 9 hours of sleep has been shown to help extend a person's life. So the
That's a lot
goal
of
is
sleep.
7 to 9 hours a night. And so I encourage people
I
to
get
have
about
their sleep
5.
hygiene. Get yourself ready for bed around a certain time. Get your routine in place. Brush those teeth, floss them too now. Don't just brush and floss.
Yes. Hello.
Take your medications, all those things. Get in bed, find something to read, low light. Get yourself
Yeah.
into a place to go to
Yeah.
sleep.
Yeah.
So that's number 3.
Is that what? That's number 3.
Number
Okay.
4 is social connectedness.
Yes.
Did
So you're saying that the fact that I love being alone by myself all the time, that's I should probably like get out and touch grass and talk to some
Yes.
people. I'm joking, but yes, I do get out and talk to some people. But yes, and not you're not just talking social media, because that ain't all the time real.
Yeah. Do you know that 1 in 2 people are estimated to be lonely in this country?
I've heard that.
1 in 2 adults estimated to be lonely in this country. So having a social network, having friends, spending time with,
Mm-hmm.
your family, whether chosen or biological or both, joining up with people who have a similar hobby, what have you, like that's so important. Social connectedness. That's number 4. Number
Okay.
5,
5.
reduction of risky substances.
I heard that. Now listen, I love that you said we're gonna tap on that. I love that you said reduction, because listen, for some of y'all know y'all need to eliminate it completely. Cause there's some people that can't eat. They know reduction is not even an option for them. They can't even do a little bit. So, but what do you mean by reduction of harmful
So
substances?
when I think about reduction of risky substances, I think
Risky stuff.
looking
Yes.
at what you are currently ingesting and being
Uh
intentional
huh.
about decreasing.
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Because
Yes. Yeah. No. I think that's a great. I've brought more awareness to my body, because I even know. Let me not tell on myself. Go. Keep going.
no,
Keep
no,
going. Seriously.
you got so much out of me. It's your turn.
Well, okay. So I'll say this. I am trying to be completely open, especially as I go into representation. I've been obviously in community representation, things like that, but I am discovering my career in politics and all of that. And I just believe that if you're going to get into that level of representation, there should be no corner, no stone not turned over, that where you um I don't have anything to hide. I don't have anything that I'm embarrassed about, but I'm an American just like everybody else. I have had to deal with anxiety, deal with so many different, and now, knowing that I have had ADHD all these years, and figuring that out. And so for so much of my life, um, my way of dealing with my anxiety was smoking marijuana, was
Mhm.
cannabis. And for some folks, anxiety, it's a great, thing for anxiety or different things or what have you. But what I didn't know about my situation was that I had layering issues. So it wasn't necessarily that I had anxiety, just anxiety that I was treating. I had ADHD. And so the moment I started treating the ADHD, the anxiety's gone. Like immediately saw the anxiety gone, and so I saw myself obviously in a reduction of needing to or wanting to even smoke, cannabis. But I don't see anything wrong with that discovery process I
Mm-hmm.
just talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, I would be criminalized depending on where I lived at for finding that
Mm-hmm.
solution for myself. So, what does it look like when you're trying to reduce risky substances or reduce, the things that your body's currently
Mm-hmm.
conditioned for, while also being criminalized to try to access healthcare? Because I feel like the pharmaceutical industry, for me, is one of the biggest thug gangs out there, and they know that people are out here needing
Mm-hmm.
a fix. And I say fix of whatever the pharmaceuticals are
Mm-hmm.
selling. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
They know that. And so the relationship between them being the ones who sell it to you versus you having some autonomy and leadership in figuring that out in a way that feels like you're a part of the
Mm-hmm.
decision making process. You're leading those decisions. What does it look like to have autonomy in that space when you're trying to reduce those things? I think part of one of the things I might be thinking is like finding all things to
Mm-hmm.
replace that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
inclination,
Well,
I
I mean,
guess.
the first thing I think of is based on what you just said around finding the root cause, because sometimes it's not just the enjoyment of the substance. Many
Yes.
times it's
Yes.
a substitution, it's a replacement, actually, or, something that we're putting there to help self soothe, self medicate, right? So, really getting
Absolutely.
to the root of why do
Absolutely.
I feel like I need that substance? And
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
are there opportunities for me to have less of that substance and still feel good, still feel happy? For me, one of the things that I, have done, because I love an old fashioned, I'm a bourbon guy. I love an old fashioned.
Yes. Oh, I love a bourbon. A good Woodford Reserve.
Yes, I am a bourbon guy. But I realized that when I'm going out, there was a default that the expectation is that because we're going out with friends, because we're going out for dinner, because we're going out to a bar, whatever, that instantly we're supposed to drink. Like it isn't even that, oh, I
Absolutely.
want this. It's that this is what we do
Right.
when we go to these places. Oh, you're going to this day party? Oh, we're about to be drinking all day. XYZ. Like it just became that this is what you do. And so what I started doing is deciding before I go anywhere if I'm drinking that day. And if I'm drinking that day, I'll have
That
one. If I'm not
is,
drinking that day,
yes.
I'm not going to have it.
That's, I've actually found myself doing that, maybe even like unconsciously, where I'm like, okay, I know today's not going to be the day. They're not going to ask me. I'm not even trying to be
Mm-hmm.
bothered with that. So, and did we get through all six? No, what's this?
We're at
Where
number
are we at?
6.
Five? We are at six now. Yes. So number
Stress
six.
management.
Oh God. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let me talk about that for a second. Let's talk stress management, and then I'm gonna let you go. But because I want to say really quickly that life is
Mm-hmm.
stress. Life is, and meaning like, okay, you cannot go from birth to death without experiencing some kind of stress, anxiety, loss, grief,
Mm-hmm.
what have you. What does it look like to manage stress while also not numbing or cutting off your feelings from experience, like, from whether it's denial, whether it's, cutting yourself off from your feelings? What's the balance of feeling, being a human being, experiencing stress, and putting a handle on it?
Mm. Well, I think first is acknowledging and being clear about what you're feeling, or trying to be clear about what you're feeling. Because sometimes, we're stressed and we don't even realize that we are operating at a constant stress, right? And that's what I get particularly concerned about because of the cortisol levels in our body when we are
Oh.
continuously
Mm-hmm.
stressed. As you mentioned, everyone gets stressed, but what we want to see is little blips of stress, not just you're at a baseline high level of stress, because that's increasing the risk for cancers and other chronic medical conditions, right? And so for those who are
Mm-hmm.
constantly stressed or who are dealing with stress, I mean, having a therapist, I think, is so important. Being able to think about how
Yes.
we can actively work to relieve stress. Sometimes it's finding ways to spend less time with people who are contributing to our stress. Sometimes it's being intentional about moving our body after a stressful workday. Sometimes it is incorporating breathing practices in to help you to reset. Sometimes it's daily yoga practice. Sometimes it's meditation. It's journaling. It's a massage, what have you. It becomes all these built-in strategies that you have that help you to actively bring down that stress level. It's an active process.
You know what I love about what you said is because what I learned after a while was it's better to have more than one, because you don't want, I'll constantly go to the well with this one or with this one. No, sometimes it's tennis. Sometimes it's a walk with the dog. Sometimes it's recording and making music in my studio, for as long as I want to. Sometimes it's playing at the piano. Sometimes it's a good meal. Sometimes it's a bubble bath. But if you get like a menu of stress relievers that ain't indica sativa, listen, no, it's against it. What I'm saying though is we can have another menu, right? We can have another menu of stress relievers that don't even have to cost us half the time, that don't have to cost money. I am going to ingrain those 6 pillars into my mind, and I am going to, because I've already been trying. I've been talking to various people I've had on this show. Supernova Salam I had on. We're talking about health, him and Queen Afua. I'm trying, and I think sometimes that is a great place to start, is trying. I wish that you were my black doctor, but you're not. But maybe you could be like, just in the, in some kind of sense, you need to get that black doctor. You need to get that going head up so I could just kind of get on the email list or just whatever, because I want you to be my black doctor. Thank you so much for just sharing your life and your story with us here. And hopefully someone out there who heard this identified with something. There were so many gems there, from dealing with, family challenges to physical health challenges to own personal challenges, but yet still never giving up and being able to see your objective through. Thank you so much. This is No Opportunity Wasted. We will be right back, y'all.
All right. Thank you all for tuning in today. And remember, our work is not done. It's ongoing. So together, let's try to build a world where every voice counts, where every action matters. Before we wrap up, I just want to leave you with this week's Buddhist breadcrumb and circle back to a concept called Isho Funi, or oneness of self and environment. Now, I know I tapped on this in a previous episode, but I feel like now might be a good time for a refresher. This teaching reminds us that our environment and our surroundings are interconnected and inseparable at the most fundamental level. Just as we are affected by the world, we also shape it through our actions, our intentions, and our choices. As we reflect on this challenging time, let's remember that protecting each other, the environment, and standing up against injustices doesn't just benefit those around us, it transforms our lives. Our words, actions, even our anger, when directed with wisdom, can create waves of change in our communities and in ourselves. So as we move forward, let's carry a sense of oneness, knowing that in guarding the dignity and lives of others, we're actually truly protecting our own. Until next time, keep pushing, keep standing up, keep speaking up, and keep finding opportunities to change the world for good. No opportunity wasted.